Okay, we had just written our three equivalent fractions with the common denominator. So on D, we're now ready to subtract. 36 minus 5 is 31. 31 minus 21 is 10. Keep the same denominator, 60ths. And you could have look at that and see, can you simplify that? Have you ever seen this done? That's the same thing as dividing the numerator and denominator by 10. I just took a 10 out, which takes a 0 away. So I can see 1/6 is my answer. So 36 minus 5 is 31. Remember, we go left to right. 31 minus 21 is 10. 10/60ths have a 0 in common, so I can cross that out because that's the same thing as dividing by 10. 10 divided by 10 is 1. 6 divided by 10, or 60 divided by 10 is 6. Okay, let's do these last three. And like I said, I added one to the bottom here that we'll do on the back because I know there's one like it on the test. So I want to make sure you have one in your notes like it. So when we add whole numbers in front, it doesn't really change the problem till the last step. Do everything you've always done, same way. So you look at notice how I just wrote my whole numbers out, but you still look at your fractions and decide what the common denominator is. So 10, nope, 4 doesn't go into 10. 10 times 2 is 20. Yes, yes, yes. So now I'm going to have 20 in the denominator of every fraction. And we need to multiply 5 by 4, which means 1 gets multiplied by 4. 4 by 5, which means 1 gets multiplied by 5. And 10 by 2, which means 3 gets multiplied by 2 as well. So that's going to leave 4 20ths, 5 20ths, and 6 20ths. Which you can see that matches this problem up here. Same problem, we just added whole numbers. So far we haven't done anything different than we did on that problem up there. This is the only step that's new. So at the very end, you add your whole numbers. 5 plus 5 is 10. Then you add your numerators. 10 plus 5, 15. Keep the denominator the same, 20. And then simplify your fraction just like we did on letter C. So that's the only new step, is now you have to add or subtract the coefficient or the whole numbers too, not just the numerators. So add the whole numbers, add the numerators, keep the denominator the same, and then just like we did up above on C, 5 is common, so that leaves us with 10 and 3/4. I always have students tell me all kinds of stories like, oh, my teacher made us make them all improper and do that. Oh, I would never do that. That's a lot of extra work. Just keep them as whole numbers, and then you have then you have your mixed number answer at the end. That adds in a lot of work if you make them all improper first, but whatever. So now we have 12, 5, and 20. We did this one earlier. 20 doesn't work. 20 times 2 doesn't work. 20 times 3, ding, ding, ding. That was our common denominator. So we did this one up on letter D, but now we've just added in whole numbers in front just to show you really don't do anything different except on the last step. So times 12, times 12, times 5, times 5, times 3, times 3. Same exact problem that we did up here on D. So then we make that 36 60ths minus 5 60ths minus 21 60ths. So the only difference between F and D is now we're going to tend to the whole numbers in front. So 7 minus 3 is 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. And 36 minus 5 is 31. 31 minus 21 is 10. So same exact fraction we got above. It's just now we have a whole number in front of it. So we can do that same process, divide by 10, divide by 10. So our final answer is going to be 2 1/6. So adding in whole numbers isn't really a big deal unless you have to borrow, and that's why I have this next one. We're going to do borrowing. So let's turn the page over and do this last one together. So 6 1/4, and let's just write before I forget on back, because you definitely want to remember to study this one because I know it's on the test. There's a lot of other ones from this sheet on the test too, but this is probably the hardest of them. So that's why I would maybe highlight it to remind yourself to look at it before you take your test in a couple weeks. Okay, so the reason I wrote it like this is because I can already tell by looking at it, it's going to be a borrowing problem. And whenever it's borrowing, it's a lot easier if you write it in the vertical format instead of horizontal. So we have 6 and we have 2. And we need to find a common denominator. So I take the largest one, 5. Nope. 10. Nope. 4 doesn't go into 10. 5 times 3, 15. Nope. 5 times 4, 20. There's our common denominator. 4 and 5 both go into 20. So same process as before. The common layperson does not know this is a borrowing problem. I just do because I know 3/5 is more than 1/4. Closer to 1, I should say. So times 4 to turn that 5 into 20, which means times 4, times 5 to turn that 4 into 20, so times 5. And like I said, you won't know it when you come to it, but you'll see short enough. So you'll see on this next step. So 1 times 5 is 5, 3 times 4 is 12. And remember, this is a subtraction problem. So I go 5 minus 12. Whoa, if I have $5, I can't subtract 12. Not when there's whole numbers there. So that tells me I'm going to need to regroup. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do that. One way that many teachers teach in high school, middle school, grade schools, they say, if you see you're going to have to borrow, you have 5, you can't take 12 away, make them improper. So this is the only time that I would recommend making them improper is an okay move. So to make them improper, remember from our previous chapters, we do 120 plus 5 would be 125 and keep the same denominator. So you'd multiply the denominator by the whole number, which is 120, and you add the numerator, and then you keep it over the same. Then you do the same thing here. 20 times 2 is 40, plus 12 is 52 20ths. So do you see why this is advantageous? Because now it's not a borrowing problem. So that's the only time I make them improper when I'm working the problem, is when I see I can't take 12 away from 5. Then I make them improper. So 5 minus 2 is 3. 12 minus 5 is 7. So 73 20ths. Was that easy or what? Not bad, right? Now, if they said write a simplified fraction, you're done. That is a simplified fraction. 73's prime. Simplified fraction. So if the directions just say subtract or they say write a simplified fraction, that's what you would write. But if the directions want a mixed number, then we have to take the denominator and divide it into the numerator. 20, 40, 60, that goes in 3 times. When we subtract, we get 13. So our mixed number will be 2, and then remainder over divisor. So, or 3 and 13/20 if the directions ask for a mixed number. So you just have to read the directions carefully, especially when you're taking electronic tests, so that you make sure and leave it in the form. If it doesn't say a form, then just stop on that first step. Okay? So if they want a simplified fraction, that's it. If they want a mixed number, that would be it. So you can also borrow, and I always show this first because students are much better at this method. But if you were really well trained in school, you might remember borrowing and you might want to do it. So let me show you borrowing. I'm just going to star this method because I like this the best. I think students do the best on this method. So 6 and 5/20 minus 2 and 12/20. So I'm just jumping in on the step where we found a common denominator and we realize that this is either going to be a borrowing problem or make your fractions improper. So you see that it's borrowing. So this is how you borrow. You think, well, I need some more for that because I don't have enough to take 12 away. So I borrow from the whole. That makes it 5. And this way's faster. But like I said, a lot of students have a hard time remembering it. So I guess it just depends if, this is how you learned. So take 1 away, but now I need to add 1. And some students think that means make that 6. No, add 1 whole. So see how this denominator is 20. So since I'm adding, I want to make another fraction with 20. Because students always go, well, why didn't you write 1 over 1 or 2 over 2 or 3 over 3? Because I want that denominator. And anything over itself is 1. So I took 1 away, but I added 1. So it would be like if I borrowed $1 from you and I paid you back 4/4. Still have the same amount of money. So take 1 away, add 1, and then you haven't upset the problem. So now what this problem is would be 5 and 25/20 minus 2 and 12/20. So see how sweet that is? Now we can subtract. So quite a bit faster than making it improper, but like I said, you got to remember the take 1 away, add 1. So lots of students just go, oh, I'm just going to make it improper. It kind of depends on how big the numbers are. If the numbers aren't too big, then making it improper is not bad. But if this was 63 and 57/88, that would be ugly. So that's kind of how I decide which one to use. So you took 1 away, that turned it into 5. Add your numerators, keep the denominator the same. Now subtract 3 and 13/20. And isn't that what we got above? Ding, ding, ding. Yes, it is. And like I said, there is one on your practice test and there is one on the test. So that's a good one to make sure you know one or both of those methods. Knowing both is a good way to check it, but sometimes you just don't have time to do both. Okay, that's all for Thursday, April 9th. So you're done with the first week. See you later.